Okay, let's unpack this one. Today, we're diving into a topic that, well, it really brings together the amazing energy you see in youth sports
Mm,
with some, frankly, quite stark realities about safety.
mm,
The scene,
mm.
the field, the rink, that passion.
Yeah, the excitement.
Exactly. And the unpredictability, too. It's where young athletes are pushing limits, and it's just vital. We understand all sides of that environment, including the risks.
Absolutely. And today, specifically, we're zoning in on something quite rare, but potentially devastating.
Commotio Cordis.
Commotio cordis. Sounds quite medical, but essentially what we found digging into the research is it's about a sudden, life-threatening heart issue triggered by a blunt hit to the chest.
Right. A non-penetrating hit.
We've gathered quite a stack of articles, studies, our deep dive material, and our mission here is really to pull out the crucial info you need. What is this thing? Why is it so dangerous?
And crucially, what can actually be done? How can we use this knowledge to make sports safer?
Yeah.
We're planning to break down what it is,
Yeah.
get into the pretty surprising science behind why a simple hit can be catastrophic at a specific moment.
It's all about timing.
Look at who's most at risk, share some, real-world stories,
Both tragic and hopeful ones.
and then really focus on the practical stuff.
Yeah.
Prevention and what to do immediately if it happens.
Our goal is pretty straightforward, really. We want to equip you with the knowledge to be more aware, to grasp the risks.
And to know how you can contribute to making things safer, whether you're a parent, a coach, or just part of the community.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. What exactly is Commotio cordis? The medical literature defines it as this phenomenon where a sudden blow to the chest.
Not one that breaks the skin or anything,
No, non-penetrating. But it triggers this life-threatening electrical chaos in the heart, usually ventricular fibrillation.
which leads to sudden cardiac arrest.
Exactly.
Agitation of the heart. That's the Latin, isn't it?
It is.
And it's really important to stress this isn't like a typical heart attack. That's usually blocked arteries, right?
Completely different mechanism. This is purely mechanical impact causing an electrical, well, short circuit is a decent analogy.
And where do we typically see this mechanical impact happening?
Well, the data points strongly towards sports where you have small, hard objects moving fast or significant collisions. Think baseballs, hockey pucks, lacrosse balls.
Football collisions too, presumably.
Yes, football is often mentioned. Anywhere that kind of focused chest impact is possible.
Okay, now here's something that really jumped out from the research. How rare it is.
Extremely rare. The National Commotio Cordis Registry suggests maybe only 10 to 20 cases per year in the entire U.S.
10 to 20, that sounds tiny.
It does. But, and this is the critical counterpoint, the fatality rate is devastatingly high if there isn't immediate effective intervention.
What kind of numbers are we talking?
We're looking at fatality rates somewhere in the range of 65% to 85% without that immediate help. Really alarming.
And the really insidious part, the thing that makes it so scary, is that it can happen to perfectly healthy kids. Athletes with no underlying heart conditions at all.
Young, seemingly fit individuals. That unpredictability is exactly why awareness is so critical. You just don't see it coming.
So how does this actually work? The science is, well, it's fascinating, but also quite sobering.
Yeah, think of the heart's electrical system like a perfectly coordinated orchestra. Everything has to happen in precise rhythm.
Right, keeping the beat.
Commotio cordis happens when a chest impact disrupts that rhythm, but, and this is key, only if the impact lands during a very specific, vulnerable moment in the cardiac cycle.
And that moment is incredibly short, right? Like blink and you miss it short.
Unbelievably short. The research points to the T-wave phase. It's
Mhm.
this tiny window, maybe only 10 to 20 milliseconds long,
Milliseconds.
while the heart's main pumping chambers, the ventricles, are electrically resetting for the next beat.
So if a blow lands right in that tiny window,
That's when it can trigger ventricular fibrillation. The heart stops pumping effectively. It just quivers. Blood flow basically stops.
and collapse follows almost instantly, within seconds.
Yeah. Research like that 2023 study in JCC really highlights three factors coming together. The force of the impact, the exact location over the heart.
And crucially, that precise timing, hitting that T-wave window.
Exactly. The most dangerous impacts tend to be direct hits over the left side of the chest, right where the heart sits.
And often for those small, hard objects we mentioned.
Often, yes. Things like baseballs, hockey pucks, traveling typically between 40 and 90 miles per hour.
That sounds fast, but maybe not always like a maximum speed hit.
Well, what's really striking is that some experimental models using pig hearts, which are similar, have shown it can happen at speeds as low as 30 miles per hour.
30. Wow. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a blistering fastball, a more moderate hit at just the perfectly wrong microsecond.
Can be enough. The impact energy basically disrupts the heart's delicate ion channels, causing an electrical storm.
It's less about brute force and more about terrible timing then.
In a way, yes. The choreography of the impact hitting that vulnerable electrical moment is key.
So given how specific that window is, who is most likely to be affected? Who's most at risk?
The data is pretty consistent here. Young athletes, particularly those under the age of 18.
And is there a clear reason why?
It seems to come down to anatomy, mostly. Younger individuals generally have thinner chest walls,
Right.
and their chest musculature isn't as developed as in adults, so there's simply less physical protection cushioning the heart.
Makes sense. Less padding, basically.
Yeah. And there's also a significant gender disparity noted in the data.
Oh,
Males account for over 95% of reported cases.
95%. Why such a huge difference?
It's likely linked to participation rates. Boys and young men are just statistically more likely to be playing those specific sports, baseball, hockey, lacrosse, where these types of impacts are more common.
Okay, but again, what stands out is the randomness for the individual. It can happen during a completely routine play, right?
Exactly. A play you might see hundreds of times without incident. And that element of chance is what makes it so deeply unsettling for parents, coaches, the whole sports community.
Now, recognizing it when it happens, that seems like a major hurdle based on what we read.
It absolutely is. One of the biggest challenges is that the symptoms aren't always immediate or obvious.
Meaning,
An athlete might take a blow to the chest, maybe stumble, even get up and seem okay for a few seconds.
and then collapse.
And then collapse, yes. As the ventricular fibrillation fully takes hold and blood stops flowing to the brain.
So those signs, sudden collapse, losing consciousness, maybe gasping breaths or no pulse.
Those can sometimes be mistaken for something less critical, right? Like just fainting or having the wind knocked out of them.
And that mistake could cost precious time.
Crucial time, because unlike some other cardiac issues, like, say, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, where there might be underlying signs or screening possibilities.
Right, things you can test for.
With Commotio Cordis, there's typically nothing beforehand. No warning signs, no pre-existing condition to flag. It genuinely strikes out of the blue.
And the research also pointed to a kind of knowledge gap.
Yes, a significant one. There was a 2024 report mentioned from the American Academy of Pediatrics highlighting that many youth sports programs just don't have adequate training for coaches or staff on how to recognize Commotio Cordis specifically.
That seems like a critical gap, especially when time is so important.
It's incredibly critical because the survival statistics are stark. Research suggests survival rates drop by about 7 to 10% for every single minute that passes without effective intervention.
Every minute. And what's the key intervention?
Early CPR and, most importantly, rapid defibrillation with an AED.
Right. And beyond the immediate medical crisis, the materials also touch on the human cost, don't they?
Profoundly. The devastation for families who lose a child, for teammates, for the whole community, it's immense.
And even for survivors.
Yes, there can be long-term psychological impacts. Fear, anxiety, maybe reluctance to return to the sport they loved. It's a heavy burden.
We've seen some high-profile incidents in pro sports recently, like Damar Hamlin's collapse. Did the sources link that directly?
The sources we reviewed didn't definitively confirm his specific diagnosis as Commotio Cordis, but an event like that absolutely thrust sudden collapses in sports into the spotlight. It definitely raised general awareness.
But does that awareness translate down to the local youth leagues?
That's the question.
Yeah.
The research seems to suggest that while public consciousness is higher, dedicated education and preparedness at the grassroots level are often still lacking.
To really drive home what's at stake, the material included some specific examples, real stories.
They are powerful. There was a case from Massachusetts, 2019. A 16-year-old baseball player hit by a pitch in the chest. He collapsed soon after. Despite people starting CPR, he didn't survive. The autopsy later confirmed Commotio Cordis. And importantly, he had no known prior heart problems, just a healthy kid playing ball.
Heartbreaking. And there was another one.
Also 2019, New Jersey. A 12-year-old lacrosse player hit by a ball. Again, collapsed. People responded quickly. But the key missing piece highlighted in that case was the lack of an AED immediately available right there at the field.
That absence was critical.
It likely was, but then there are the other stories, the ones that show what happens when preparedness is there.
Like the Ohio case.
Yes, in 2022, a 14-year-old hockey player went down after a chest impact. His coach recognized the signs straight away.
Knew what it might be.
Yes, suspected Commotio Cordis, got the AED, used it within minutes, and the player survived.
Wow, that's stark, the difference it makes.
It couldn't be clearer. Having the right equipment and people trained to use it immediately is literally the difference between life and death in these situations.
Okay, so that brings us to the crucial part.
Mm-hmm.
What can actually be done? How do we prevent this, or at least drastically improve the odds?
The research points towards a layered strategy. It's not just one thing. It involves education, being prepared, and looking at equipment.
Let's start with education and awareness. Who needs to know?
Basically everyone involved. Coaches, absolutely. Athletes themselves to understand the risks. Parents, definitely.
What do they need to know?
Recognizing the risk factors, those types of impacts. Recognizing the signs of collapse, even if delayed. And crucially, understanding why acting instantly is so vital. Don't wait and see.
Are there resources for this?
Yes, things like workshops, online courses the American Heart Association offers training, for instance. The strong recommendation coming through the research is that schools, leagues, they need to build Commotio Cordis awareness into their standard safety protocols.
Make a routine?
Exactly. Then there's the equipment side, specifically automated external defibrillators, AEDs.
These seem absolutely critical from the examples.
They are the key tool for reversing ventricular fibrillation. The data is clear. Having an AED accessible and used quickly dramatically improves survival.
So where should they be?
Ideally, everywhere sports are played. School gyms, community fields, ice rinks. They need to be easily accessible, not locked away in an office somewhere.
And people need to know how to use them, right?
Yeah.
They looked intimidating.
They do, but modern AEDs are designed to be used by laypeople. They provide voice prompts, guide you through the steps. But yes, training is still essential so people feel confident and act fast. That 2024 circulation study really hammered at home AED use within 3 minutes boosted survival by 50%.
50%. Huge. What about protective gear? Chest protectors?
That's another layer, but the research is a bit cautious here. It emphasizes that currently no chest protector can guarantee 100% prevention.
So they help, but they're not foolproof.
Exactly. The goal is risk reduction designing gear that absorbs or disperses impact energy better. We are seeing advancements, new standards for chest pads, things like softer core baseballs or lacrosse balls for younger age groups.
But adoption can be an issue.
Yes, cost is often mentioned as a barrier, especially for newer, potentially better equipment. It can be slow to filter down to all levels.
Okay, and then there are playing practices themselves.
Right. Coaches play a huge role here, teaching techniques that minimize direct chest exposure, proper ways to catch a ball, how to position your body defensively in contact sports.
Little things that add up.
Potentially, yes. And league rules can contribute too, maybe limiting pitch speeds or the hardness of pucks for the youngest players, for instance.
So multiple layers of defense. But what if, despite everything, an incident happens?
Yeah.
What's the immediate response protocol?
This needs to be automatic, drilled in. Every second counts. First step, always. Call emergency services. Get 911 or your local equivalent activated immediately.
Don't delay that.
Never delay. While someone is calling, if the athlete is unresponsive, not breathing normally, or has no pulse, start CPR right away. Good, hard chest compressions.
What's the recommended rate?
The American Heart Association guidance is 100 to 120 compressions per minute. Push hard, push fast.
And then the AED comes in.
As soon as it arrives on scene, turn it on, attach the pads as shown. The machine will guide you. It analyzes the heart rhythm and will advise if a shock is needed.
And you just follow its instructions.
Absolutely. Deliver the shock if advised, then immediately resume CPR. You continue the cycle, CPR, AED analysis, shock if needed, until the paramedics arrive and take over professional care.
That sounds intense. Training must be key.
Absolutely essential. Knowing the steps is one thing, but practicing them through courses like those from the Red Cross or AHA builds the muscle memory and confidence to act effectively under pressure.
Should this training be mandatory?
The strong suggestion from the research and expert bodies is yes, schools and sports organizations should really mandate annual CPR and AED training for coaches, athletic trainers, key staff. It has to be refreshed.
So pulling it all together, creating a safer sports environment, isn't just one group's job.
Not at all. It's a collective responsibility. That comes through loud and clear in the materials.
Who needs to step up?
Sports organizations, for sure. From the smallest youth league right up to the pro level. They need to prioritize safety. which means investing in those AEDs, ensuring consistent training, staying updated on equipment standards.
What about parents?
Parents can be incredibly powerful advocates, asking the tough questions at their kids' schools or clubs. Where is the AED? Who is trained? What's the emergency plan? Pushing for better standards.
And the athletes?
Educating athletes themselves about the risks, about safe play, even about recognizing signs in a teammate is important too.
And the wider community?
They can play a vital role. Fundraising for AEDs, especially for programs or areas that might struggle with the cost. Hosting community awareness or training sessions, helping bridge those resource gaps.
Because the cost is a factor, isn't it?
It is. The research acknowledges that. An AED might cost, what, $1,000, $2,000, plus ongoing costs for battery pad replacement. And training isn't free either.
That can be a hurdle for volunteer leagues or underfunded schools.
Definitely. But the counter-argument is pretty compelling, isn't it? What's the cost of not doing it? The cost of a lost life? The impact on a family and community? It's immeasurable.
Are there ways to offset the cost?
Yes, thankfully. There are grants available from various organizations like the National Athletic Trainers Association and others, specifically aimed at helping schools and youth sports groups acquire AEDs and implement safety programs.
So resources are out there if people look.
They are. It takes effort, but it's possible.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize the key takeaways from this deep dive.
Mm.
Commotio Cordis. It's rare, yes, but the potential outcome without immediate action is devastatingly severe.
Understanding the how is crucial, that it's about a specific impact. Hitting that incredibly brief, vulnerable electrical window in the heart's rhythm. It's not just any chest blow.
Recognizing the signs is vital, even if they're delayed slightly after the impact. Sudden collapse needs immediate attention.
And knowing unequivocally that prompt CPR and especially rapid defibrillation with an AED are the absolute keys to survival. That's the critical intervention.
So the core message derived from all this research seems pretty clear and actionable. Safety in sports, particularly youth sports, depends on making education a priority.
Ensuring that essential life-saving equipment like AEDs is not just present, but readily accessible.
And making sure people are trained regularly in how to use CPR and AEDs effectively.
Right. So maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on, building on everything we've explored in these sources. We know now that even a seemingly moderate impact, if it lands at that precise, fleeting electrical moment, can be catastrophic.
Yeah.
And we know that truly reducing this risk requires significant ongoing investment in training people and providing life-saving equipment like AEDs across the board.
So the question becomes, how do we, as a society, collectively ensure that the incredible benefits of youth sports, the fitness, the teamwork, the discipline, the sheer joy, aren't dangerously overshadowed by this preventable risk?
And perhaps more pointedly, who ultimately bears the responsibility for making these essential safety measures, the AEDs, the training, not just available in some places, but truly universal and accessible for every single young athlete, regardless of the sport they play, the league they're in, or the resources of their community.